What is that? Who are you?
For my mother,
A DNA test? She's your daughter!
The first bottle hit the marble floor so hard, it burst like glass, and everyone in the private hospital lobby turned at once. "Get that girl away from my father!" a woman screamed, grabbing Alma by the wrist. Then Rosa, the mother Alma had spent all morning trying to save, collapsed beside the elevator and stopped moving. If stories like this get under your skin, subscribe, like the video, and stay with me until the end. Because what happened to this family didn't just destroy a lie. It exposed a sin that had been buried for 23 years. At 6 that morning, Alma had been standing at a traffic light with a cooler box, sweat rolling down her back, selling cold bottles of purified water for coins. That was her life. Red light, smile, run. Green light, dodge mirrors, run back. Again. 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 She sold pure water under a sun that made the pavement ripple, while her mother lay in a public hospital waiting for a treatment Alma still couldn't fully afford. Some people bought from pity, some because the water was cold, some because Alma had that face, the kind of tired, stubborn face that made you feel guilty looking away. By noon, she had sold every bottle. By 1 o'clock, the city health officers had dumped half her next batch into the gutter because her street permit had expired. By 2, Rosa's doctor called and said the words that made Alma forget how to breathe. "If we don't move quickly, your mother's kidneys won't hold." Alma didn't cry. She thanked him, hung up, borrowed 2 more crates from the corner purifier, and sold until her fingers cramped shut. That was why she was in the private hospital lobby now, because somebody had whispered that the pharmacy inside sold the medicine cheaper than the one near the bus station. Cheaper, not cheap. Nothing was ever cheap when you were poor. It was just slightly less impossible. But the moment Alma rushed toward the elevator, clutching a paper bag of medicine and the little cash she had left, she saw him. Don Ernesto Varela, chairman of Varela Springs, king of bottled water. His face stared from billboards all over the city with slogans about purity, family, and dignity. Alma had seen that face 1,000 times. But Don Ernesto looked at her like he had seen a ghost. His hand went rigid on the armrest of his wheelchair. The color drained from his face so fast that even Alma froze. Then his daughter-in-law, Valeria, followed his stare, looked Alma up and down, sunburned skin, cheap sandals, hospital bag, cooler burns on her palms, and made the ugliest assumption rich people always make when poor people get too close. "Security." Alma tried to pull away. "I'm here for my mother." Valeria tightened her grip. "You people always have a story." You people. Alma would remember those 2 words longer than the slap that came later. She twisted free just as the elevator opened, and Rosa, trying to get off her stretcher alone because she hated asking for help, swayed once, then crumpled to the floor. "Ma!" The medicine bag dropped. Pills scattered. Security ran one way, nurses ran another, and in the middle of the chaos, Alma looked up and caught Don Ernesto still staring at her. Not angry. Terrified. That was the first moment she understood something was wrong. Not poor wrong. Not hospital wrong. Old secret wrong. Rosa survived the collapse, but barely. She woke up in a narrow bed under a flickering light with dried blood at the corner of her mouth, and Alma sat beside her with both hands wrapped around Rosa's cold fingers. "You scared me." Rosa gave a weak smile. "I'm too stubborn to die on a Tuesday." It was Thursday. Alma laughed anyway, and then immediately started crying, because that was what happened when fear left the body too fast. Rosa tried to lift her hand to wipe Alma's face, but she didn't have the strength. "Did you get the medicine?" Alma nodded. "Then stop crying. We still have work." That was Rosa. Even with pain swimming in her eyes, she talked like tomorrow was a debt they both still had time to pay. The doctor came in 10 minutes later with charts and that careful voice doctors use when the truth is too heavy to put down all at once. They needed a transplant evaluation. They needed faster lab work. And because family donors often gave the best chance, they wanted to run a full genetic compatibility panel on Alma. Alma said yes instantly. Rosa said no so fast the doctor blinked. "No test." Alma turned. "Ma, no." The room went quiet. Even the doctor stepped back. Rosa looked frightened. Not of dying, of the test. That frightened Alma more than anything else had that day. When the doctor left, Alma leaned closer. "Why would you say no?" Rosa stared at the blanket. "It won't help." "How do you know that?" Rosa's voice cracked. "Because some doors should stay closed." Alma felt something cold slide through her chest. "What doors?" Rosa didn't answer. She only said, "Please, not now." But once fear enters a room, it doesn't leave just because someone whispers. That night, Alma sat outside the hospital on the curb with Mateo, the only person who had stayed in her life long enough to see her at her worst and not move away. Mateo fixed motorcycles in a shop 2 blocks from the purifier where Alma got her water. Grease under his nails, soft eyes, a mouth that always looked like it wanted to say something bigger than the words he chose. "She's hiding something," Alma said. Mateo handed her a stale sandwich. "You think?" She almost smiled. Then she said, "Why did that old man look at me like that?" Mateo frowned. "Who?" "Ernesto Varela." Now Mateo actually stopped chewing. "The water billionaire?" "The one whose family almost had me dragged out." Mateo stared at her for a second too long. "What?" He looked away. "Nothing." "Mateo." He exhaled. "You ever seen a picture of Ernesto's wife when she was young?" Alma's stomach tightened. "No." "You should." She didn't sleep that night. At dawn, she borrowed Mateo's cracked phone, searched old magazine photos, and felt her pulse go uneven. Young Elena Varela had Alma's eyes. Not similar. The same. The same tilted brows. The same little space between the front teeth. The same sharp chin Rosa used to kiss when Alma was little and called her bird face just to make her laugh. Alma shut the phone, then opened it again, then shut it. By noon, the hospital called. "Please come in. We have your results." The lab technician didn't know she was detonating a life. She said it gently, too gently. "There is no biological maternal relationship between you and Rosa Reyes." For a second, Alma thought the woman had confused files. "That's impossible." The technician swallowed. "There's more." She slid a paper across the desk. Not just a transplant panel, a kinship alert. The hospital had cross-referenced family registries because Alma's DNA partially matched someone already in their system. At the bottom of the page were 2 names: Elena Varela, Alejandro Varela. Probability of parentage, 99.98%. The room went silent except for the buzz of fluorescent lights. Alma looked at the paper, then at the woman.
then back down. Nothing in her body knew what to do with that information. Not anger, not grief, not even disbelief. Just a violent emptiness. She walked out of the lab without feeling her legs. When Rosa saw her face, she already knew. The old woman tried to sit up, panic flooding her eyes. "Alma, don't." The word came out sharp enough to cut both of them. Alma held up the paper with shaking hands. "Tell me I'm reading this wrong." Rosa began to cry. Not loud. That made it worse. Quiet crying from strong people always sounds like something breaking in another room. "Tell me," Alma whispered. Rosa pressed trembling fingers to her mouth. "I didn't steal you." Alma's entire body went cold. "I saved you." Those 4 words should have explained everything. Instead, they made the world darker.
Saved me from what? Saved me from who? And why had Rosa spent 23 years loving her so fiercely while burying a truth this big under every birthday, every fever, every hug? Before Alma could ask another question, Rosa doubled over in pain so violent she almost fell from the bed. Nurses rushed in, monitors screamed, and Alma was pushed into the hallway with a secret in her hand and no answers. By evening, the Varela family knew. Maybe the hospital notified them. Maybe Don Ernesto already suspected. Maybe monsters just have better instincts when the dead come back. What mattered was this. Alma returned from buying cheap coffee and found a man in an expensive gray suit waiting outside Rosa's room. No introduction, no warmth, just a sealed envelope. Mr. Varela would like to resolve this quietly. Inside was more money than Alma had seen in her life. Enough for surgery, enough for medicine, enough to change the smell of her future. And a paper clipped to it. A confidentiality agreement. No press, no public claims, no contact with the Varela family again. Alma looked at the man. "What is this?" A mistake being corrected. "My mother is dying." "Yes," he said smoothly. "And this can help her. Sign tonight." "What if I don't?" His expression didn't change. "Then you remain what you were yesterday." He left before Alma could throw the envelope at his head. She stood alone in the corridor, staring at the money like it was alive. This was the impossible choice poor people know too well. Truth or treatment. Dignity or survival. Morality becomes a luxury when somebody you love is attached to tubes. Mateo found her an hour later, sitting on the floor with the envelope in her lap. He saw the cash, saw the paper, and went still. "They're buying your silence." "They're buying my mother time." Mateo knelt in front of her. "Same thing?" "I don't know anymore." The words burst out of her so hard that a nurse glanced over. Alma lowered her voice, but tears were already falling. "What if Rosa dies because I wanted to be noble? What kind of daughter does that make me?" Mateo's jaw tightened. "The kind who doesn't let rich people bury her alive." "Easy for you to say." He flinched. That made her feel worse instantly. "I'm sorry." "No," he said quietly. "You're in hell. You get to be messy." That almost broke her completely. Then Rosa called for her. When Alma stepped into the room, Rosa looked smaller than ever, like the illness had finally started stealing her from the edges inward. Rosa saw the envelope immediately. "You met them." Alma nodded. "Tell me everything," she said. So Rosa did. 23 years earlier, she worked nights cleaning a private maternity wing owned by the Varela family. That same week, she had delivered a baby girl of her own. The baby lived for 40 minutes. Rosa never got to hold her properly. She was still bleeding, drugged, half-conscious with grief, when a storm knocked out power in part of the hospital. In the confusion, she heard a newborn crying from the disposal corridor near the old furnace room. At first, she thought she was hallucinating. Then she found a metal bassinet shoved beside a stack of biohazard bins. Inside was a living baby, wrapped in a Varela hospital blanket. A bracelet on her tiny wrist read, "Baby Girl Varela." Alma couldn't breathe. Rosa kept talking, because after holding silence for 2 decades, some truths come out like floodwater. She had seen Don Ernesto arguing with a doctor hours earlier. He was raging because Elena Varela had given birth to a girl, not the male heir his father's will demanded to secure controlling shares in the company's old family trust. Alejandro, the baby's father, had begged him to stop shouting because Elena had nearly died in labor. But Ernesto cared more about the company than the child. He ordered the doctor to register the baby as stillborn. Elena, heavily sedated after hemorrhaging, was told her daughter had died. Alejandro knew. Not every detail, not the furnace room, but enough. Enough to stop it. Enough to fail. Rosa stared at Alma with red, exhausted eyes. "I should have gone to the police." "Why didn't you?" Rosa looked shattered. "Because I had just buried my own child, and when I held you, you stopped crying. I told myself I would keep you safe for one night. Then one night became forever." Alma couldn't speak. Rosa's voice trembled harder. "I tried to leave you at a church with the bracelet so someone honest would find you. But it rained. You had a fever. I brought you back home, and by morning, I was already your mother." There it was, the ugliest, most beautiful truth. Rosa had done something wrong for a reason that felt heartbreakingly human. Not a saint, not a monster. A grieving woman who chose love before law. Alma stood there drowning in it. "So my whole life," she whispered. Rosa nodded, sobbing now, "was real. Every bit of it." Then she looked at the envelope and reached for Alma's hand. "Do not sign." Alma stared at her. "Ma, listen to me. If you trade your name for my treatment, I will die knowing I made them win twice." "What if I lose you?" Rosa's face crumpled. "You never lose the person who made you. And I made you, Alma. Not with blood, with everything else." That was the moment Alma broke. Not graceful tears, not movie tears, a full-body collapse beside the bed, forehead on Rosa's lap, shaking like a child. Rosa, weak and trembling, stroked her hair. And for one terrible second, Alma was 6 years old again, sick with fever, listening to rain on the tin roof while Rosa whispered, "I'm here. I'm here. I'm here." The next day, Don Ernesto made his move. He announced a charity gala at Varela Springs headquarters, a massive media event, new hospital donations, new branding, a speech about family values from a man who had thrown his own granddaughter away like medical waste. Alma would have ignored it. She wanted to stay with Rosa. But then, Elena Varela herself came to the hospital. No cameras, no makeup team, no polished smile. just a pale woman in a simple blouse carrying 23 years of missing grief in her eyes. When she saw Alma, she stopped breathing for a second. Alma hated that her own chest answered. Elena stepped closer, like she was approaching a dream she didn't trust. "May I?" She didn't finish. She didn't know what she was asking for. A touch? A word? Forgiveness she had not earned, but maybe still ached for? Alma said nothing. Elena took a folded photograph from her bag and handed it over. It was an old picture of herself at 19. Same face, same mouth, same eyes. Alma looked up slowly. Elena was already crying. "They told me she died." Alma's anger surged, because those words were too small for what had been stolen. "They lied to you," she said. Elena nodded. "I know that now." "Did my father know?" That question changed everything. Elena's face hardened. "Alejandro says he didn't, but men like him always know enough." Alma looked away. Elena drew a shaky breath. "I asked for an independent DNA test. The results came this morning." Her voice broke. "You are my daughter." Not, "You are my blood." Not, "I think." Not, "Maybe." You are my daughter. Words Alma had wanted her whole life from the wrong people. Now they landed too late to feel simple. Elena wiped her tears, then said something unexpected. "Come tonight." "To the gala?" "Yes." "Why? So your family can pay me off in better lighting?" Elena's eyes sharpened. "Because my father-in-law built his empire by deciding which lives counted. Tonight, I decide mine does." The gala was obscene. Crystal chandeliers, white flowers, a wall of bottled water arranged like a cathedral. Smiling donors in clothes that could have paid for Rosa's treatment 10 times over. And at the center of it all stood Don Ernesto Varela, talking about compassion. Alma almost turned around. Then she saw Mateo near the back, nodding once. "I'm here." Elena stepped onto the stage before Ernesto finished his speech. The room shifted immediately. Wealthy rooms always know when danger has entered. "Elena," Ernesto hissed into the microphone. "This is not the time." She took the microphone from him. "No," she said, voice shaking but clear. "It's exactly the time." Cameras lifted. Guests turned. Alejandro went white. And then Elena said the one sentence nobody in that room was ready to hear. "My daughter did not die at birth. She has been alive for 23 years. And tonight, she is standing in this room." The silence after that was almost holy. Then came noise, gasps, whispers, phones. Someone laughed in disbelief. Alma stood at the back, feeling every eye cut toward her at once. Ernesto recovered fast. Old predators do. "This is a disgraceful stunt," he snapped. "That girl is a street vendor trying to extort my family." Street vendor. He said it like disease. Alma felt the old humiliation rise in her throat. The traffic lights, the dumped bottles, the security guards, the envelope, the years, everything. Then Rosa's words came back. "I made you with everything else." Alma walked forward. One step, then another. The room parted around her. Some recognized her from the hospital.
Some just stared because poverty looks offensive under ballroom lights. Ernesto's face tightened the closer she got. Elena handed Alma the microphone. Her hand was trembling. So was Alma's. Good, she thought. Let them see what truth costs. My name is Alma Reyes, she said. I sold purified water outside intersections so my mother could afford treatment in a hospital your company claims to support. No one moved. No one even coughed. Alma kept going. Yesterday, your lawyers offered me money to disappear. Today, your family called me an extortionist. But if I wanted your name, I would have asked for it. I came for the truth. Alejandro suddenly stepped forward. This is enough. Alma turned to him. Did you know? He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Ernesto. That was answer enough. But then Mateo did something beautiful. He held up his phone and projected a recorded audio file through the event speakers. Earlier that afternoon, while pretending to deliver engine parts to the Varela garage, he had caught Alejandro in a private call with Ernesto. Alejandro's recorded voice filled the ballroom. I heard her cry that night, Father. I knew the baby was alive. The room exploded. Elena staggered like she had been shot. Alejandro tried to grab the microphone, but security no longer knew who they worked for. Then, from the doorway, another voice cut through the chaos. Don't you dare call her a liar! Everyone turned. Rosa stood there in a wheelchair, hospital blanket over her knees, face gray with pain, but eyes burning. Alma's heart nearly stopped. Ma, what are you doing here? Finishing what I started. Mateo rushed to steady her as she lifted one shaking hand. In it was a tiny plastic hospital bracelet, faded, cracked, but still readable. Baby girl Varela. And in the other hand, a copy of the death certificate filed before the official delivery time. Even the journalists went silent then, because lies can hide behind power. Not timestamps, not old plastic, not a dying woman looking a billionaire in the eye and saying, "You threw away a child because she wasn't useful to you." Ernesto lunged into rage. This woman kidnapped that baby! Rosa didn't flinch. I saved the life you tried to erase. Then Elena turned to Ernesto, all tears gone, and slapped him so hard the sound rang through the ballroom. For 23 years, she whispered, I mourned a daughter you stole. Ernesto said nothing after that. He couldn't, because the truth had finally become public, and public truth is the only thing men like him fear. 3 days later, police opened an investigation. The board suspended Ernesto. Alejandro resigned before they could force him out. Every channel in the country ran the same headline in different words. Water empire built on family values hid family crime. But the part that mattered most didn't happen on television. It happened in a hospital room at 3:12 in the morning when Alma signed consent forms with one hand and held Rosa's fingers with the other. Elena paid for the best doctors, not to buy Alma, not this time. To stand in the wreckage and do one decent thing. A donor kidney became available within days through an emergency placement. Maybe fate, maybe luck, maybe the universe finally being ashamed of itself. Rosa went into surgery before sunrise. Alma kissed her forehead and whispered, You are my mother. Do you hear me? You. Always you. Rosa smiled through tears. And you are my miracle, even if I found you in the dark. Hours later, the surgeon came out, and for once, the news was good. Months passed,
The cameras moved on. They always do. But Alma didn't go back to the traffic lights. She kept the name Reyes. She kept Rosa's little house, even after Elena offered her a mansion. And with the compensation from the legal settlement and the shares Elena transferred into her name, Alma did something nobody expected. She opened a dialysis and clean water center in the neighborhood where she used to sell bottles under the sun. She named it Rosa House. On the front wall, under the sign, she had one sentence painted in blue. Purity means nothing if it isn't human. The day it opened, reporters asked whether she considered herself a Varela now. Alma looked at Rosa, thinner but alive, sitting beside Elena on a bench where grief and gratitude had somehow learned to sit together. Then Alma smiled. "Blood told me where I came from," she said. "Love told me who raised me. Only one of those kept me alive." And that was the truth that shattered the whole family in the end. Not the DNA, not the scandal, not the headlines. It was the fact that the poorest woman in the story had carried the richest heart. And the people who had everything had spent 23 years proving they were the empty ones. Some blood betrays you. Love never did. If you were Alma, would you have taken the money and stayed silent?